Hi, I'm Mercedes, and thanks for joining me again today for another recycling project. Well, just in time for back to school, we're actually going to take our basic notebook, which is fine just like that, but we're actually going to take our recycled fabric and we're going to turn it into some very cool tie-dye fabric notebook covers. And if you don't like the tie-dye, we actually are going to be embellishing some of our solid recycled fabrics with some heat seals. So let's get started because we have a lot of material to cover today. Well, the first thing that I'm going to ask you to do is a basic simple paper pattern. Now, if you miss any of the specs today, please visit www.m721organics.com and get your free download on the home page for all the specs and the instructions of our demonstration. Okay, so as I said, let's get started. Well, the first thing that we're going to do is that we're going to take some paper. Again, great time to use that gift wrapping paper, some tissue paper, whatever it is that you have around the house. And the reason that I'm going to ask you to do two paper patterns is because the soft paper, we're actually going to lay it on our fabric panel, and the heavier weight paper, which is cardstock, is what we're actually going to glue the fabric on, okay? So you're going to measure, and again, these specs are for a basic 8.5 to 11-inch notebook. When you get your download, you can actually convert all of the specs depending if you're covering a textbook or if you're covering a smaller or larger notebook, okay? So you're going to measure 22 inches from side to side and 14.5 inches from top to bottom. Now, why such large specs? Well, the reason for that being is that I actually like to have very, very clean lines on the inside of my notebook. Now, you also have the option to finish it with a ribbon, but it's really up to you. If you definitely only want to use one paper pattern, then you would skip this paper pattern and go directly to the cardstock and just measure then 13.5 inches from top to bottom and 21 inches from side to side. Now, let's just do a very, very quick demonstration on the fold lines. Now, on your paper pattern, let me just bring this back a second. I actually like to do a spec of 1 3/4 inch on the flaps, and I like to give myself 1 1/4 inch at the top. I know that it may sound a little bit larger than normal, but it's really just to make sure that my notebook is secure. But again, I'm just here as the guide, and please use all of your creativity and whatever is most comfortable for you. Okay, so let's just run a very quick tip on the fold line. I always get very confused as to which way I should start. Well, always remember, the top and the bottom of the notebooks go first, and always the sides go second, okay? So you're going to end up doing the first fold, second, third, and fourth. Now, I like to use a 6-inch bone folder because this actually acts as a smoothing tool. It'll help you with the creases, and since you are working with cardstock and a lot of it comes in very, very different weights, the flatter that your cardstock paper is, the easier it's actually going to fold once you have the glue and also the fabric on top of the paper. Now, I always like to do a very quick mock-up with the actual notebook because I like to do a mini crease, not a full crease, but a mini crease, just to give myself a guide point as to where the spine is going to be. And as you notice, our paper is not edging forward, and this pattern actually worked out. Well, now we're getting ready to do a test for the fabric. Again, thank goodness for all of those fabric scraps. So I have a little piece of the cardstock, and I actually have a little piece of the fabric that's the same weight as the fabric that we are going to be using. It's very important to use the same scrap because we need to test the glue and also test the fabric. Now, I like to work with the PVA glue. Actually, you can use any type of fabric glue that you want, but always remember that the key to this is that the less glue you use, the better. Now, why do I like to use PVA glue? Actually, it's white in color, but it actually dries clear. And I like to do just a basic top to bottom stroke, and then I like to do like a cross hatch to make sure that I pick up any excess glue that's in there. Okay, so here we are. We're getting ready to do our test. Stretch your fabric. And once it's on, you can actually use your bone tool again to smooth out any excess lines that you may have had. And here is where you can actually test if you used too much glue, if you didn't use enough, and maybe you want to change the direction on how you apply the glue. Now we can actually see that none of the glue seeped through. We're very, very happy with this. So let's do a mini demonstration of what you're going to do for your fabric book cover. Well, again, how do we put the fold lines? Remember, top, bottom, and side. And then all of a sudden, we have a very, very quick insert for our notepad. Okay? So now we're actually going to glue our tie-dye fabric on. And again, I'm just using a small piece. Please take your time when you actually do this. Try not to rush through this step, because this is the last step to finish your project. And again, you always want to put as little glue as possible. It's better to have less glue and then reapply than to have excess glue and then possibly get some of your glue through your fabric. Again, remember to stretch your fabric lightly. Now it's on. And remember those clean lines that I had mentioned to you? Well, I actually cut this a little bit larger because I wanted to do the demonstration for you. But you would actually go ahead and take your glue once again and just lightly put it very, very close to the edge as possible. And then once you're done with that, you're going to fold this over. And then fold this in again. Now, all of a sudden, you have excess fabric. Well, you're going to take your fabric scissors and you're going to treat this as if you were mitering some corners. And just cut it on the bias. Put that to the side. Just cut it on the bias. Maybe your fabric is very lightweight and you won't even have to do that step. But what happens is that when you actually fold this in, here is your clean line. Isn't that terrific? Well, thank you very much for joining me, because we actually took our fabric scraps and we turned them into these great fabric notebook covers. So thanks again for joining me again today. Please remember to continue to recycle, continue to reinvent, and continue to recreate you, because you're worth it. I hope to see you again very, very soon, and thanks again for joining me. Take care.